Hello again, everybody, and welcome into the We Do the Betting WDTB podcast. We're becoming seasoned veterans with this stuff. We had another good week this week. I got my buddies on the cast with me, of course, Zach Reichard, Geoff Landry, and the beast, Benny Cakes, Ben Mastola. And we're going to break down the week that was a super wild card weekend. It did not disappoint in the National Football League. And then we're going to glance ahead towards the Divisional Round, which comes up this weekend, spread across Saturday and Sunday in the National Football League. And we'll take some bus stops along the way, but we're going to open right up with the big news leading into this week. Eagles head coach Doug Peterson fired. He is packing his stuff after 5 years, a record of 46-39-1, 4 playoff victories, and of course the only Super Bowl in franchise history. Zach, you've been a Doug Peterson fanboy, at least in the last couple of weeks. Do you agree with the decision?
Oh, I'm going to have to say no. I don't agree with the decision, but just getting into it a little bit here with the firing and Doug Peterson in general. Yeah, like I said last week, I kind of stood by his side and backed him on a couple of the decisions that he made. But you said it, first Super Bowl in Philadelphia Eagles history, and that was just 3 short years ago, and already he is fired. I think that says enough in itself right there, the problems that were going on in-house. It's a testament to relationship for owner, GM, quarterback, whatever it may be also. And the firing, these guys don't grow on trees. I mean, there's not all these great coaches out there. I don't know where they're going to go from here, who they're going to find, if they already had a replacement in line. Those decisions he made last week, maybe he made those thinking, I'm out the door. This will solidify it. I want to be out the door. I'm not sure what this roster has anymore. QB situation is a little shaky. And I know what I can bring being 3 years removed from a Super Bowl. I know someone else is going to give me a better shot. And on top of that, as we spoke about it last week, with all the enticing, sexy head coach opportunities, openings that there are with the Chargers, Jets, Jags, maybe that played a little bit into his decision. So I think he's still a great coach. As for the Eagles, like I said, these guys don't grow on trees, so I don't really know much what they do from there.
Hey, I'm with Zach. I mean, who are they going to replace him with? What more can you ask for? Like you said, Zach, 3 years removed from the only Super Bowl championship in the Eagles' history. And then comes back around. It's rumored that one of the main reasons was he wanted to promote from within the offensive and defensive coordinators, whereas Jeffrey Lurie wanted to look from the outside. If Peterson really wanted to be there, you'd think he would maybe conform to the owner's wishes and give in a little bit. But it's rumored that he failed his exit interview, quote, failed it, and then went and met with Lurie again down in South Florida and still couldn't come to any agreement. Another thing that Zach didn't mention I wanted to bring up was, where does Carson Wentz fit into this? It was said that he wanted to be traded, that their relationship was fractured beyond repair. But yeah, where do you go after with Peterson? You going to let a mediocre quarterback like Carson Wentz decide who's coaching your football team? And yeah, I think Peterson's going to be coaching somewhere else, and maybe next year with all those openings. So all I got to say is to Doug, Philly thanks you for the Lombardi, but pack your stuff.
I wasn't surprised that Doug Peterson was fired. Actually, last week on the podcast, I predicted that he was going to be fired. I didn't expect it to be this soon. I just have a feeling that he lost the team this year, and the team was going against him. They were saying that they were confused and weren't happy with the decision, especially with bringing Sudfeld in last week. But I think just this year he was losing his team, which is why he was out. Now, granted, he had only 2 losing seasons in those 5 years. He won them their first Super Bowl. Who else can they get? Well, right now they're looking at Lincoln Riley potentially. General manager of the Eagles has a relationship with him. Riley gave some advice on who the Eagles should have drafted in some years. Dallas Goedert, Jalen Reagor, and Jalen Hurts were a part of those 3 that Riley had said, hey, go after these guys. But right now, Eric Bieniemy, I mean, he is definitely somebody that they're going to look at. He was the Eagles running back in 99. So he could be an option, but I'm thinking he's more likely to go to Houston. They're also looking at Deuce Staley, I read, who was former Steeler, but the running back of the Eagles. He was an assistant coach for the last 2 years. Now, do I think that Peterson is probably a good choice for Philly? Yeah. Who else are you going to go with? I mean, out of those names, besides maybe Lincoln Riley is a surprise, I'd say Peterson should stay there. But my feeling is that he was losing the team. He was losing relationship with players such as Carson Wentz, and not giving in to Jalen Hurts early enough really hurt Peterson's shot. And, now he's out of there.
Well, he gave some much warranted, he said, snaps to Nate Sudfeld, and ultimately, make me the case otherwise, that was his undoing. He showed some loyalty to Sudfeld, and that's it. He's out the door. But the Eagles do get to pick, 6th instead of 9th if they would have beaten the Washington football team. So, hey, I'll tell you this, guys. The National Football League is truly, of all things on planet Earth, the most or the highest example of what have you done for me lately. Doug Peterson is an offensive guy. The Eagles were 26th in scoring. Carson Wentz's growth clearly stunted. It wasn't working out. I'm on board. I think it's time to just kind of say, okay, thank you for your service. Time to part ways. It's not working out. Let's bring in some fresh ideas and see how it plays out. One team that is not following that advice, the Chicago Bears, have given a vote of confidence to head coach Matt Nagy. Geoff, I know you're going to have an opinion on this. Are you a Matt Nagy guy?
I'm not. I've been saying it for the past 2 weeks. He saved his job by them backing into the playoffs. If they don't get in the playoffs, he's gone. He's been gone for a week, 2 weeks now. But they back their way in. They lose first-round playoff game, wild card game, and he's around for another year. Yep. Here's to another year of mediocrity in Chicago.
I think you give him at least 1 year. I talked about him last week saying that they should keep him, and of course they are now. You know, the team's there, but there's still that hump that they need to overcome that he's not getting over. I think you give him one shot this coming year, and you really see what team he has this year. We know that Allen Robinson might not be a part of that team this coming year. You had a hurt and a rough start to David Montgomery, but then he started to come alive. So they were just an on and off team this year. So in my opinion, you give them one more shot next year to see what this team can do and to see what pieces are given to them this offseason. And then if they just have a subpar year or are not just getting over that hump, then you go elsewhere in the following year.
And it goes back to the point. If the Bears get rid of Nagy, who do they sign? Who do they go with? He did win those last few games to keep his job. And I think the biggest thing in this is Trubisky. Maybe the Nick Foles hiring was bad, you know, and it lit a fire under Trubisky saying that this okay, I got to step up or they're going to replace me, as they did with Foles. Lit a fire under Trubisky. He came in after Foles went down. They replaced him. Trubisky comes in, wins the last 4 or 5, gets them into the playoffs, and maybe Trubisky's ready to go now. I mean, this whole thing with QBs coming into the league, starting as rookies, starting young, and after 1 or 2 years, 3 years, we make a decision. Oh, they're good or they're not good. QBs need time to develop in this league. QBs at a young age being so quick to say, writing them off and not giving them a chance and all this. Maybe Trubisky just need a little more time to develop a little bit. And I think him and Nagy have a good relationship. You run it back 1 more year, see what you got. When it comes to Nagy, what else do you have without this? And I just like what he's doing. He seemed to keep the team. He still has the team. They snuck into the playoffs, but I mean, they played the Saints tough. Like it was a 2-score game, but they didn't get blown out. They can hang around with teams. Let's see what Trubisky got. Let's run it back a little with Nagy, and 1 more year for both of them or for one of them. We'll see what happens. Then you go from there. I like it.
All right, everyone, it's trivia time. In the 2017 NFL Draft, there were two big-name quarterbacks picked after Mitchell Trubisky. Who would like to chime in and name them?
Watson.
And
Watson
Mahomes.
is one, and Patty Mahomes is two. Zach, you talk about the time it takes for a quarterback to develop. Didn't take Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson that long to develop, and the Bears traded up to number 2 to get their man Mitch with a limited amount of starts at North Carolina in the 2017 NFL Draft. Here's where I come down on this, guys. The Bears have gone 8-8 the last 2 years. Matt Nagy's 28-20 as a head coach, and he's made the playoffs 2 out of the 3 years he's been at the helm. But I look at this. The team has scored 1 or less offensive touchdowns in 18 of 50 games under Nagy. I'm not a fan. I don't think it's working, and I would be in favor of Chicago moving on. There's some pretty good coaches out there. You maybe bring in Bieniemy. I don't know. You go make a pitch to Urban Meyer. Lincoln Riley's a sexy name. I don't know. You guys bring up some pretty good names there. I'd prefer to kind of culture change and see if we can overhaul the Bears offense, because obviously they have pieces on the defense, Roquan Smith, Khalil Mack, and they have some guys that can play. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. Oh, boy, we got to get to this one, and we're going to spend some time on it. The Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round go down to their division rivals. It was 28-0 after a quarter to the Cleveland Browns. I had to keep rubbing my eyes to make sure I was looking at the score correctly. Just got a new TV last year, fellas. I was thinking that my TV might be broke again. Starting in March last year, it wasn't showing any sports, and then I came to find out that was because of the pandemic. All joking aside, the Steelers fought the Browns 28 points, and they could not dig themselves out of the hole. The Steelers are aging, 19 unrestricted free agents. What do you do with quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, guys like Marquise Pouncey, Bud Dupree, Al Villanueva? I mean, you're going to cut a guy like Joe Hayden. Let's just dive right into this one.
Oh, boy. The Browns is the Browns. Hey, I think that this game just puts the exclamation point on a decade of mediocrity for the storied franchise. Ever since that loss to Green Bay in the Super Bowl, it's been now officially a decade of mediocrity. This year at 11-0, Steelers come out. They finish up the season 1-5 with their first loss to the Browns at Heinz Field since 2003. And keep in mind, division opponent, they're playing them every year. Juju comes out after he's dancing on logos, TikTok, and all this and that. He can't help himself. Gives them a little bit of bulletin board material before the game, showing the immaturity in this locker room, and says, I think they're still the same Browns team I play every year. Nameless gray faces, couple good players, but at the end of the day, I don't know. The Browns is the Browns, and that sort of became the Browns rally cry this weekend. Bulletin board material, you heard Baker Mayfield reference it. If he didn't think that was going to fire up this team, I don't know, what he was thinking. So the Steelers come out flat, fall behind 28, turn the ball over 5 times, and can't recover. Then after the game, immaturity continues. Chase Claypool, great season, 11 touchdowns, great rookie season. He says, it's a bad loss, but the Browns are going to get clapped next week, so it's all good. And that's just the culture of the Steelers franchise right now. Just to recap that decade I was talking about earlier, since that loss to the Packers, he missed the playoffs 4 out of 9 years. Got a loss to Tim Tebow, a loss to Joe Flacco, a loss to Blake Bortles, and now a loss to Baker Mayfield. In that decade, 3 wins with a loss to respectable losses to Manning and Brady. And let's also not forget, while having a Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger under center, the Steelers had arguably the best wide receiver and the best running back in the entire league for a bulk of this decade. And what do they got to show for it? Nothing.
When it comes down to it, when I see it, it comes down to coaching. And I've always said for years now that the only reason Tomlin won those Super Bowls was because he had Cowher's team, he had Cowher's players. And to be honest with you, I think they need an overhaul at in the coaching department, especially with Tomlin, but also with Randy Fichtner, 3 years with the Steelers. Their 2020 offensive rank was 25th overall in the league, last in rushing yards. And last year, without Big Ben, 30th offensive rate and 29th in the run. So the last 2 years with Fichtner there have been absolutely horrible. They needed a coaching overhaul badly. And, this is the year to maybe look into it. You say, Ben, 19 unrestricted free agents. What's Ben going to do? What's Pouncey going to do? There's a lot of quarterbacks that may be available come draft time. A lot of good names out there. Free agents out there. People demanding trade, such as Sam Darnold might be looking for a trade. Carson Wentz might be looking for a trade. So there are some opportunities here for the Steelers, and I'm interested to see what they're going to do in the offseason. Juju is one, and besides his antics and kind of acting immature, dancing on logos, he did bounce back. Fantasy 16th this year with Ben, 97 receptions, which was 7th best in the league at wide receiver, 9 touchdowns, which was 8th best. So, I think that this front office really needs to look at the coaching. They obviously have to look at these free agents to say who we're going to keep, and also look at the potential of a trade. If Ben's not coming back, who can we bring in now? Because the answer isn't Mason Rudolph. Or can we trade up in the draft to draft one of these better quarterbacks that's going to be in the 2021 NFL draft?
Wow. Steelers lose to the Browns in the playoffs. What a shocker. There's always one upset in the playoffs, and that's where it was right there. What's the bigger story here? The Steelers potentially downfall, or the Browns potentially uprise starting to begin here? Man, when we talk about the Steelers, and as you guys mentioned with all these great points, Tomlin and all the underachieving and all of this, and Tomlin's great regular season record, but not a good playoff record. I mean, I think it's starting to show and come down to, there's always all this talk about Mike Tomlin. He's a player's guy. He gets along well with the players, and it's easy going for all the players and all of this. And I think that's just starting to show with the regular season winning. And then when it comes to push comes to shove, they tighten up a little bit, and they're not fully focused, and they're not ready. And that's been a cause of some of their underachieving in the playoffs and not doing what they should. As for the Browns, that's a heck of a win for them, obviously, right off the jump, getting a high snap and the first touchdown. I don't know about you guys, but when that happened, the first thing that came to my mind was that Super Bowl with Peyton Manning and the Seahawks. First play of the game for their high snap over Manning said, Seahawks get it, and the game was over from there. As it was with the Steelers-Browns, essentially. Browns came out to win 48-37. As for what the Steelers do, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, he's a Hall of Fame QB. I think you ride him out at least one more year, go with it. Maybe they finally do a wake-up call. We keep underachieving. Now time is the time. As for the Browns, we got to give them a little bit of love here. When you're due, you're due. Maybe it was just their time. They were due for a win in the playoffs. We know how many times they've lost consecutively to the Browns to the Steelers at home. The Browns finally got a win. They're rolling right now. Their offense looked good, and also scoring 48 points. Where was this great Steelers D in mid-season that was the best D in the league, or one of the best Ds in the league? I think one of the things we got to point out as well is some of the injuries, obviously, that the Steelers had on the defensive end there. Maybe it finally caught up to them a little bit, and they just weren't able to do what they wanted to do. I mean, as for scoring 30-some points, I mean, that you would think that if you would have said the Steelers are going to score 37, you would have said, oh, they're beating the Browns, and no way the Browns are scoring more than that. So I think that's a little testament of the injuries as well. Maybe that caught up to them. But when you're due, you're due. So I think maybe it was the Browns' time, and big wake-up call for the Steelers. They no longer can bully around the Browns and say, we're the Steelers, you're the Browns, so we're going to win.
Let us not forget, in the absence of their head coach and play caller, their starting cornerback due to COVID and one of their defensive presences up front in Olivier Vernon, who tore his Achilles in the win over Pittsburgh in Week 17. Yeah, we should give the Browns some credit, but I look at the history of the Cleveland Browns, and I look at the two teams on paper, and this is what I keep bringing myself back to. Geoff touched on it. Since the Super Bowl loss to the Packers, the Steelers have 3 playoff wins against Cincy, against Miami, and against Kansas City when they had Alex Smith before Patrick Mahomes. 5 big losses under Tomlin in the playoffs stand out to me. I'm going to go all the way back to 2008. They lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in a wild card matchup with David Garrard at quarterback. 3 straight touchdowns from the Jags. They led 21-7 at half. Fast forward a bit. 2012, the Broncos at Mile High, heavy favorites against Tim Tebow, not a great NFL quarterback. Wild card matchup. The Broncos go 20-0 in the second quarter, took a 20-6 lead into the half against Pittsburgh. Fast forward, the 2017 AFC Championship against New England. New England comes out, punches the Steelers in the mouth. 10-0 after a quarter. They led 17-9 at the half. 2018 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was the year the Killer Bees, Brown, Ben, and Bell, were at the height of their prowess in the National Football League. Steelers had one of the best offenses. Jags had one of the best defenses. 14-0 first quarter. It was 28-7 Jags at one point, 28-14 at the half. And, of course, what the Browns did to the Steelers on Sunday night, 35-10 at half, 28-0 after a quarter. What do those games tell you guys? Well, I'll tell you what they tell me. 121-46. Mike Tomlin's led Steelers outscored in the first half of those 5 games, 4 of which the Steelers were heavy favorites, and 1 that was a pretty close game against New England. What does that tell me? It tells me we give Mike Tomlin all the credit for the regular season wins, one of the best active winning percentages in the National Football League in regular season games. To the victor goes the spoils. I hold him accountable because time after time after time after time, his teams are not ready from the jump, and they pay for it. And an interesting thing that we want to consider here is what the Steelers do moving forward. Now, here's an interesting thought, right? Deshaun Watson's out there. Are the Steelers going to make a move like that? No, they're probably not. But in a situation where you have an aging quarterback like Roethlisberger, he's going to take a $20 million hit against the cap. Do you stay with him? Does he retire? Who knows what the future holds? But as far as Deshaun Watson goes, is it worth like what we floated out there, Zach? I'll ask you, like the what's being floated out there, I should say, like a potential trade to Miami is kind of what the rumblings were this week with Deshaun Watson. What do you think about that? Do you think that a trade like that is something the Steelers need to do? And how about the antics of Deshaun Watson?
Do I have a minute here before I talk if the Steelers should make a trade? A little venting, a little talking I got to do about Deshaun Watson. So first off, when it comes to Deshaun Watson, we know what happened with the Texans this year, 4-12. We know they lost DeAndre Hopkins. They lost their first-round pick to Miami. And now after one bad year, we have Deshaun Watson over here that says he's unhappy with the team. He's not sure what the direction is. He's wanting a trade. And I just don't understand it. He literally just signed a 4-year, $160 million deal, $40 million a year, 5 months ago. When he signed that deal, he knew DeAndre Hopkins was gone. He knew they didn't have the first-round pick. And now after one bad season, one bad year, he wants to say he's unhappy with the organization and not sure what they're doing here. There was all these talks about, obviously, they're in the process of hiring a new GM, and they have hired a new GM. He said he was unhappy because he wasn't in on the decision. They didn't hire the guy he wanted. You know what, Deshaun Watson? What gives you the reason to think you can be in on the process of hiring the new GM here? They didn't hire your guy. Too bad. That's not your move here. You're not LeBron James. What have you done to get that attention where you can hire in the process? And also, the guy that the Texans did end up hiring, Nick Caserio, I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with him or know much about him, but he spent the last 20 seasons with the New England Patriots. Arguably, over the last 20 years, the best franchise in football, dynasty, 6 Super Bowls. So that right there, his resume speaks for itself. Why would you not be okay with signing a guy like that And why are you going to be upset because they didn't hire your guy or the guy you wanted them to hire? I think it just comes down to he knows the Texans don't have much. They traded the receiver. They traded the pick. They're not going anywhere. So he's kind of using this as an excuse to force his way out. Get out of here with this. One bad season, and now you want to say what you want to do and force a trade just because you're in a tough spot. Deal with it. You signed a contract. You make $40 million a year. Win more than 4 games a year and 2 against the Jaguars. Whoo, boy. As for Deshaun Watson, the trade options, the Steelers, they're not going to do it. That's not within the Steelers organization. They're not going to make a trade like that. They would never do that. That's not how they're ran. And they're not going to take on that type of cap room. And as for other teams, we'll see what's out there. I don't even know if the Texans are going to do it yet. I don't know why they would unless things get really bad and he really starts to force his way out. But thanks for the time there. I just need to let that out about Deshaun Watson because that was really making me mad.
Hey, Zach, you know what? I mean, I see your point, but I disagree with you. I mean, you paid the guy that much money to be the centerpiece of your football team. Not to mention the head coach or the owner takes him out to dinner after they fire Bill O'Brien and tells him that he wants his input on the next head coach and the general manager. Your franchise quarterback comes to you with a list of guys, and then you don't even consult your franchise quarterback after that, or tell him who you're hiring before it comes out in the press. Deshaun Watson finds out, through Twitter or whatever, of who the hire was. I mean, you got to keep your franchise quarterback in the loop on this stuff. You're building the franchise around him. I mean, what do you think? You think Tom Brady or something? I know Watson hasn't won like those guys, but you think that any other team's not going to consult their franchise quarterback before they make a big decision like this? I mean, at the very least, let the guy know before he finds out on Twitter.
That's a good point. I mean, their GM and the owner's probably saying, you got to keep us from losing 12 games a year as well. You didn't own up to that, making $40 million a year.
No, I agree. No, it's a good point. Just throwing it out there, though. I mean, I'm consulting with my franchise quarterback, especially after I tell him I want his input.
All I got to say is I think that Eric Bieniemy is going to be the head coach. Watson's staying in Houston, and that's where it'll be at the start of the 2021 football season. You're paying the guy this money. You want to build the franchise around him, so you want his input. Maybe it's I don't know. I just feel like they should at least listen to what he has to say. What's it got to hurt? I mean, you want him to be happy if you're building around him. I think that he's going to stay there. I think they're going to work things out. But in all honesty, if you're paying a guy that much and, he looks like he'd be your guy. He's always a solid quarterback. He's been a top fantasy option, even this year with hardly anybody to throw to. And their defense was horrendous. So I think they got to rebuild. And I think it's going to come down to whoever the new coach is going to be, lean towards Bieniemy, and I think Watson then will be happy, and I think those two will work together. So that's what I'm thinking is going to happen next year.
I don't envy whoever's coming in to coach the Houston Texans with no draft capital, close to the cap, and a disgruntled, very talented quarterback who just led the National Football League in passing yards. As we move on, guys, we got to look back on Wild Card Weekend and finally put a bow on it before we head into the divisional round this coming weekend. And oh boy, the slate is just as juicy as ever. But we're going to start doing this. What we got right, what we got wrong, and a potential takeaway from the week that was in the National Football League. Ben, your buddy found the end zone again.
Austin Hooper, I'll tell you what. He was a bust this year in fantasy. His ADP was 10. He finished 21st, but he did finish strong. So, hey, I always loved the price on him in DraftKings to close out the season. So, yeah, he did find the end zone again, which was pretty funny. I said when I was watching, I'm like, yep, there he is. The takeaway from this week, if you guys follow us on our Instagram, WDT Bettin', you'll see the video where I pretty much nailed the Bucks Washington football team game. The Bucks with the win, the football team to cover 8.5. They did by a half a point. It still counts. It's a win. And they hit the over as well, led by Tampa Bay. I also threw out an Antonio Brown reference there with the score, which he got. So that was probably my best pick of the week. If you guys listened and played, you could have made some cash off that. Otherwise, I mean, the biggest was probably the Steelers. I was high on them winning, thinking they could easily cover the six and a half points that they were favored. That was a huge surprise to me that they didn't win. But a takeaway is that, and I think it starts from last week carrying into this week, there's going to be some really good football games, competitive football games on both sides of the ball. And if you look at last week in the wild card week, the average win by every team was only 8 points. So you're looking at just over a touchdown a team won by. So the games were competitive. Even Chicago, that looked like maybe they were going to be blown out there, they scored that touchdown late, and they only lost by, I think it was 12. But anyways, there was some really good competitive games, and that's going to carry into this week.
Jeff, I have to say this. Jeff, I do have to say this. One of us in Ben got the Bucks game spot on, and one of us in the Bucks game was dead wrong. We don't have Joe Sinceri on the podcast this week, but shouts to Joe.
Yeah, we're not so big idiots, are we, Zach?
We sure aren't.
Hey, yeah, I think we all swung and missed on that Browns game, though. I think we all had the Steelers winning that one. Ben, I couldn't agree more. My takeaway was going to be that, the NFL is competitive, and any of these teams can win on any given Sunday or Saturday in this case. Like you said, the Bears margin there, loss margin was 12. That was the biggest margin on the weekend. And not to mention, that was just a 7-3 game at halftime. Like you said, they closed the gap on that late touchdown. So a little bigger deficit, before that. But, every single game was a game. It was worth watching. I don't think I missed a single snap the whole weekend. Hopefully I can do the same in watching this weekend as well. What we got right, what we got wrong, I'll let Ryan and we put in a bunch of prop bets. I kind of spearheaded a 6-player anytime touchdown score parlay we put together. We picked one from each game.
We have a new enemy on the podcast. We have a new enemy, public enemy number 1.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, you let us down. We won 5 out of 6. Derrick Henry, on the odds was most likely to cash in, reach the end zone for us, but he's the only one that didn't. We got Jonathan Taylor, DK Metcalf, Antonio Brown only had 2 catches, one of them for 6 though. Kamara and Nick Chubb on that swing pass. He was the 5th one out of 6, so we only swung and missed on Derrick Henry. The Ravens did a great job keeping him in check. He wasn't able to seal a deal for us. With that being said, I think we're going to give it another run at a 4-player now, one from every game, anytime TD score this week. I'm looking at Robert Tonyan from the Packers. I'll talk about him a little bit later when we get into that game. Stephon Diggs with the Bills, Travis Kelce with the Chiefs, and Alvin Kamara with the Saints. I'm thinking I'm going to go with those for the anytime TD score parlay.
Hey, I got to give it to you guys. Hell of a job on that touchdown score. Getting 5 out of 6 is pretty good nonetheless, and it's crazy enough to think the highest odds guy didn't get into the end zone there. Maybe next time or maybe this week you think about doing a little round robin action where even if you get 5 out of 6 right, you still get a little money for it. So that's just something to keep in mind when you do the playoff touchdown if you're going to do that again this week. As for a couple of things we got right, I do not want us to forget to mention the Ravens-Titans game. Boy, oh boy, are they hot? Are they rolling? I was all over that one. They were 3.5-point favorites. I believe I picked them to win as my lock, my favorite pick. I think I even said they were going to win by a lot more than the 3.5, and as they did with the 7-point win, they are just cruising right now. Wrong place, wrong time for the Titans, and that pick for me right there it felt good. I mean, it was just the Titans. It was a wrong place for them, and boy, the Ravens are rolling. They are looking scary, and I'm sure we will be talking about them a little bit more as we get into it here with the games that we have this weekend.
Interesting when you think about it, guys. The favorites 2-4 against the spread in Wild Card Weekend. Covers from road Indy, road Washington football team, road Browns, and an outright win for the Rams, as well as an outright win for the Browns. So Indy, Washington football team, Browns, and Rams cover. Browns and Rams, of course, go on and win outright. Shouts to the Buffalo Bills offense. If you played Josh Allen rushing over, count it. If you played Stephon Diggs receiving yards over, count it. We told you to go heavy on the Bills, and those two paid, as well as the GOAT, Tom Brady. I said in his 5, I think, of his last 7 games coming into the matchup with the Washington football team, he was over 340 yards passing. Count it. Had a good day on Saturday. On Sunday, we just hit on Nick Chubb. But now it's time to work on this week's winner as we turn the calendar ahead to divisional round play. But we will begin with game number 1 in the NFC, the Los Angeles Rams. Who knows who's playing quarterback this week? They're getting 7 at the Green Bay Packers, the number 1 total defense against the number 1 total offense. Over-under set at 45 and the hook. Zach, you used to hit leadoff back in the day when we were playing youth baseball. Why don't you take this one away and hit leadoff for us?
I sure did. Lay down a little bunt, get on. Hey, doesn't matter how far you hit it. A single's a single, you know? Obviously, the injury is a big question for the Rams with the QB situation. Goff, and also Aaron Donald. We saw him get a little banged up, but he seems like he's going to be tough. He's going to be ready to go. It's just a question of how healthy Aaron Donald will be. If he's close to 100%, we will see when the time comes, because he seems to be a big factor in this game for me. When it comes to defending Aaron Rodgers, stopping Aaron Rodgers, we know one of the recipes for that is getting to him quickly and not letting him sit back there in the pocket. As for Goff and the Rams QB situation, his finger didn't really look that well. He had a couple throws where it just was wobbly. There was no spiral on it. It seemed like the finger was definitely bothering him. Walford, albeit didn't really look that bad, but he also didn't look that great where you have much confidence in him to win that game. As for the spread here, what was it, 7? That seems pretty high. The one concern for me that I will say is there's always that scary notion in the NFL when you get that first round bye. How fresh are you? How did the week off give you a little rust? Are the Rams a little bit more ready to play? Are they going to come out the gate a little early here? And I think that's an important factor, because if you get down on the Packers, that's not something you want to do. As for the Rams, this game's going to be all about their defense. Can they stop Aaron Rodgers in this offense? And one of the matchups I'm looking most forward to, one of my favorite players in the NFL, Jalen Ramsey, going one-on-one with Devontae Adams. That's going to be a special matchup right there in itself. This is a tough one. As for the line, I have to roll with Green Bay here and say that they're going to cover that 7. They're just too hot, too unstoppable. Offense is too good. The Rams, yes, they got a win in Wild Card Week 1, but that was against the Seahawks, who towards the end of the year started to fall off a little bit, having a little problems with their offense there. So I'm going to roll with the Packers to cover the spread here. Over, under 45.5. I am going over in that. I think after a low-scoring game for the past week with the Rams Seahawks, I think it's going to be a little high scoring. I think the Rams are going to score a little bit more because they're going to get some touchdowns, but being down against the Packers, I'm thinking over. I'm thinking the score is going to be somewhere in that 30-20 range, Packers.
Looking at this game, I'm like, Packers all day. They're going to cover that now 7, and they're going to go on. But then I looked into it a little bit more. Obviously, injuries might play a factor here, but it looks like Aaron Donald will be good to go. Jared Goff was a full participant in practice today. And I looked into the Rams a little bit more. This year, they went 8-1 against teams 500 or better. 8-1, and it just doesn't seem like that. When I saw that, I was shocked. I was like the way that the Rams played this year, they were that good. Yeah. And their one loss was to the Bills only by 3 points. So, I think that the Packers are going to start out slow just from having that week off. I like the Rams to cover this 7, and make it interesting. I think the Packers start out slow. I think that the Packers will come back and win this game. It'll be a very close game. But offensively, the Rams looked really good with Cam Akers, who was huge last week with his 28 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp, interesting to see if he'll play this week or not. Otherwise, Robert Woods, he's the guy to go to this week. I would play a player prop on him. I don't know if Ryan has him in there, but he's a guy that I would play to score a touchdown this week. But I like the Packers overall to win, but I like the Rams to cover that 7, and I am playing the over because the Rams, their offense, they put up 30 last week. I think the Packers can put up just as much. So a very close game, and play the over.
If you're the Rams, you got to start Goff, right? I don't, he didn't do anything too special against the Seahawks, but I don't think they pull that game off with Wolford under center for the full 60 minutes. So starting there, I'm going to say that the Rams and McVay, he's going to give Goff the nod here. What this game comes down to really is just the Packers offense against the Rams defense. Like you said, Ryan, you got Rodgers and Adams on one side, Aaron Donald and Ramsey on the other side. Green Bay's won their last 6. In those 6, they've put up 30 points 5 times. Aaron Rodgers, the MVP, he's been unbelievable. Leading the league in touchdowns, protected the ball well all year, only throwing 5 interceptions, and he leads the league in splash plays, 40-plus yard pass plays. The Rams have only allowed 17 passing touchdowns this season, with 7 of those going to tight ends, what I mentioned earlier about Robert Tonyan. So I'm liking Tonyan this week. Tight end, he's come out of nowhere. He finished the regular season with 11 touchdowns on only 52 receptions. So he's pretty efficient there, getting into the end zone. So I expect, with Ramsey covering Adams and the focus on, Valdez-Scantling and the rest of that receiving core, maybe Tanyan's a guy that can find a soft spot in the middle of the field, sit down, and have a day for himself. Also, the Rams have given up 33.5 or more receiving yards to tight ends 10 out of their 17 games regular season, plus last week against the Seahawks. So I'm going to take Tonyan in a prop bet over 33.5 receiving yards this week. Coming full circle, I like the Packers minus 6.5 or 7, whatever the spread is, one possession game. I like that. I just think that Rodgers and company is going to be able to outduel that Rams defense, which will also, I think, be a low-scoring game. The Rams games have gone under 12 out of 17 times this year, so I'm going to take Packers minus 6.5, 7, and under 45.5.
Oh, this one just gets juicy, and I think it comes down to the red zone. The Rams' number 1 total defense, 1 against the pass and 3 against the run. They have had 29 total points in games or fewer 3 out of the last 5. That is between the two teams. With that being said, Green Bay was the best red zone offense all year long, scoring a touchdown on 80% of their red zone possessions. For Aaron Rodgers in the red zone, the Packers have scored 48 red zone touchdowns, 35 of which Aaron Rodgers threw. That is an outstanding, just a gaudy number. It's crazy. And let us not forget the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. Temps around 30 degrees is what the projections are as we sit a few days out. And with the temperature below freezing, Rodgers, 76 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's 2.2 tutties per game, a 108.3 passer rating, 263 yards per game. Oh, yeah. And of those 35 touchdowns in the red zone for Aaron Rodgers, 29 of which have come inside the 10. That brings me to the 3 bets I like the most in this game. First of all, I think it's going to be a close game. Give me the Rams, give me the under, but we're really zeroing in on the props this week. Geoff, I'm with you on Tanyan. He's number 3 in yards per target amongst tight ends. You and I are playing that one. Maybe we'll get together for a couple Pepsis, bud, and enjoy the game on that one. He's done that 33 or more yards for Tanyan 8 times. That one stands out to me. Aaron Rodgers, his over-under touchdowns is 1.5. 1.5 for the MVP this year. I don't know if Vegas knows something we don't. I know that Rams defense is good, but Rodgers has had more than 1.5 in all but 2 games this year. With that being said, fire me up some Aaron Rodgers. I think his touchdown prop is going to hit. I think the Packers aren't going to be able to run it. With that being said, we get to the last one. Geoff, you touched on him a little bit. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, his over-under for receiving yards is just 23.5. This coming from a guy that's had 6 targets in 3 of his last 6 games. That is crazy. And he also has the 3rd highest average depth of target this year, 18 yards. 22 deep targets, a 79.8% snap share. We know that Valdez-Scantling can go deep. Devontae Adams has a lot of coverage coming his way and a lot of attention coming his way, and rightfully so. Marquez Valdez-Scantling can go deep. He has brick hands, but he's also been over 23.5 yards 9 times this year. Equanimeous St. Brown on the injury report. Lazard's banged up. I think Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the one to play in this game. Those are the 3 props I like. I'm going with the MVP, and I'm going with MVS. Game number 2, the Baltimore Ravens getting 2 in the hook at the Buffalo Bills. Circling the wagons, or at least trying to start the circling of the wagons as they got their first home playoff win since the mid-90s. This is an 8:15 p.m. kickoff on NBC, over under at 50.
So just looking at this one and looking at that 50 number, I know later we'll be giving more of our locks and some parlays we'll be playing. But this is my lock of the week, is hitting the over on this game. The Bills averaging 38 points per game in their last 6. The Ravens averaging 34 points in their last 6. So this is going to be a high-scoring game, and it's going to be a competitive game. I know that they both have really good defenses as well, but I think that they're going to overcome that. I think that it's going to be a higher-scoring game. I like the Bills to cover that 2.5 and move on. I just right now trust Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball, so if they can stop him from running, they'll win this game. So I'm riding on Allen. I'm going with the Bills 2.5, and I'm just smashing that over of 50 as the lock of the week.
This is the game I'm looking forward to the most this week. The Bills and the Ravens. Love the over, like you said, Benny. This is going to be a fun one. And, you know, you guys, I'm sure you all agree with me. The key to the Bills winning this game is to contain Lamar Jackson. If they can contain him, they'll win this game. Last week, they gave up 163 yards on the ground, albeit to Jonathan Taylor and the Colts coming from a running back position. And on the other hand, you had Lamar Jackson run for 136. You had Gus Edwards run for 38. You had J.K. Dobbins run for 40-something. So this Ravens team is a team that can score, and they're going to watch game tape, watch Jonathan Taylor, and watch the Colts run all over these guys, and they're going to try to replicate that. However, I think that the Bills should be able to turn that around, spy Lamar a little bit, contain him, and hopefully, keep him in the pocket, make him throw the ball a little bit more. That's the key for the Bills to win there. Receiver, keep your eye on in this one, aside from Stephon Diggs. Hollywood Brown with the Ravens, 109 last week. He's now got 235 yards in 2 career playoff games. His over-under prop receiving yards is 58.5. I'm looking to take that. On the other side of the ball, I mentioned Stephon Diggs. He's going to be going up against Marlon Humphrey. Humphrey struggled with A.J. Brown last week. I think Brown went 6 catches, 80 and change yards, and found the end zone. And he's got a much more difficult assignment this week against Stephon Diggs, the leading receiver in the NFL. Diggs 14-2 on the season, going over on receptions. The number this week for Diggs is set at 7.5. Last week he went for 6. That was one of the 2 times he went under on that. So I'm going to lock that in. Stephon Diggs over 7.5. He gets back on the right side of that number. I like the Bills to win their 8th straight game, cover the 2 in the hook, and the game to go over 50 points.
Game of the week. You said it, Geoff. This is the game I'm looking forward to most as well. We have arguably 2 of the hottest teams in the NFL going at it. The Ravens coming into Buffalo. Ravens are finally looking for that deep playoff run. The Bills, this is their first time around. They are looking for a deep playoff run as well. Something's got to give in this game. This is a game that I do not want to pick at all. I am so torn in this. I keep going back and forth on what I want to do, who I want to win. Maybe I can go back on mute accidentally and not have to pick this one here. But, man, oh, man, when it comes to the points, 2.5 for the Ravens, I automatically want to take the Ravens 2.5 here just because of the points, because I do not know where this is going to go. When it comes to the Ravens, it comes down to Lamar Jackson and the passing game. Can he pass? Can the run game keep them going? Will the Bills stop the run game? Will the Bills get out to the lead where the Ravens have to pass it and can't rely on the run? It's unstoppable, it seems like, for the Ravens, where with their run game, it's like that's all you have to do is stop Lamar Jackson from running. And what does he do? Gets a 56-yard touchdown run against the Titans to break the game open, tied, and give them all the momentum back. It just seems like it's very difficult to stop. So that's going to be the big question mark. As for the Bills, we know what their offense can do. We know what Josh Allen can do. He is rolling right now, having the best season of his career. Arguably would have won MVP if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers. I think he was second in line there. They are saying it is a 50% chance of snow, and that is a big thing to look into and see later in the week how that dictates. I think that is a big factor, and that favors the Bills. Of course, Lamar Jackson was asked about this in an interview earlier in the week, and he said, I've never played in the snow before. I've never played a snow game. I do not know what to expect. I don't know if he's just saying that to kind of hedge himself a little bit there, but I think if it does snow, if it does get cold, that favors the Bills. It's an 8 o'clock game, so it is going to be as cold as it gets. I like the Ravens plus 2.5. Maybe I want to say the Bills are going to win this game. Maybe they win it by 1 or 2, but I like the 2.5 because I have no idea where this game is going to go. When it comes down to the over and under 50, I'm with you guys as well. I like the over in that. As we've mentioned before, the Bills, they can score 30 to 40 themselves, and the Ravens offense is rolling as well. I think this game is going to be one of those games in 31-28, 30-28, somewhere in that line. Not sure which side it's going to go yet, but give me the Ravens plus 2.5 and keep an eye out for the weather.
All of us are on the over, and 3 out of the 4 are on the Bills. So Zaki is the only one going against the group. That means I am indeed on the over. I think the 2 bright young quarterbacks are going to show us why they are 2 of the best quarterbacks right around that 25 years of age mark. I think the Bills at home are going to get it done. I think they're going to win by a field goal. So that's why I think they're just going to squeak over and cover that 2 and the hook. A couple of things I'm really looking at. Stephon Diggs, Geoff, you talked about him. It's just an all-world year for Diggs. He and Allen are going to be playing together for years to come. And I think that in the years to come, we're going to start thinking of Allen and Diggs like we do Rodgers and Adams, guys like that. Digging deeper into Stephon Diggs, number 1 in targets this year, number 2 in completed air yards, number 3 in target share. That is huge because the Bills' offense isn't a one-trick pony. They have other weapons as well. And Diggs is number 4 in air yards amongst qualified wide receivers. That means he does a little bit of it all. 6 for $128 on 9 targets last week. And, of course, that big touchdown against the Colts. Diggs is on fire. I don't think Marlon Humphrey is going to be the answer. So I think that the 93.5 over-under, we like to play the overs. We like to single out matchups that we like and go over on them because it's no fun to play the under. Life's too short to play the under. Everybody knows that. So I'm playing Stephon Diggs this week. On the other side of the football, tight ends from Indy last week against Buffalo went 14 for 136 and a touchdown. Jack Doyle had the big game. Of course, there were contributions from Trey Burton and one of our new favorites on the podcast, Mo Alley Cox. So that is a big thing to think about. Buffalo plays a lot of zone defense, and you can't play man against Lamar because if guys get downfield with their backs turned, he makes you pay. We saw what he did to Tennessee on that big touchdown run that changed the game. So with that in mind, the Bills are going to play zone. Where do you beat zone? In the middle of the field. Give me some Mark Andrews. 52.5 is the over-under there. He is number 3 in target share. I think this is going to be a big Mark Andrews game. I think they're not going to let Hollywood Brown take the top off the defense. Lamar's going to be able to run it, but when he has to throw, he's going to be looking at Mark Andrews. Game number 3 as we move forward. The Cleveland Browns. Surprise, surprise, they're there. They're getting an even 10 at perhaps the best team all year, the Kansas City Chiefs. This is our first on the Sunday slate. It's a CBS game. Again, just after 3 for the kickoff. Over under the highest of the weekend at 56. Is this going to be one of the higher scoring weekends we've had in the playoffs for years to come? I don't know. Maybe you do, Geoff.
Go on a limb here and disagree with Chase Claypool and say that the Browns are not going to get clapped this week. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the Browns game last week. I think it's a young group of guys out there having fun. You got Baker, Jarvis Landry, Chubb, Hunt, all those guys on the offensive side of the ball, Myles Garrett leading up the defense. It's going to be fun to see him play the defending Super Bowl champs. However, I think the road is going to end here for the Browns. Good for them to get to the playoffs, something to build on next year and into the future, but I think that the Chiefs will prove to be too much on the offensive side of the ball for the Chiefs. Obviously, you got Mahomes, but Travis Kelce is going to be a problem this week. Second in receiving yards in the NFL as a tight end behind only Stephon Diggs. Looking for him to have a big game. Last week, Eric Ebron was the tight end that benefited against the Browns defense for the Steelers there. 7 catches, 62 yards, and a score. Browns defense ranks 28th in the league against tight ends. Travis Kelce is going to have a field day. The over-under for him receiving yards is set at 87.5, which is pretty high. The prop bet for him for receptions is not out yet. I'll be keeping my eye on that. I think we'll see what it's set at. If it's in the six-ish range, 6.5, I think Kelce will go over on that. The thing that, gives the Browns an opportunity is the 1-2 punch of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. The two of them give the Browns the opportunity to control the game a little bit against the Chiefs. So the Browns can get that 1-2 punch going and dictate time of possession, control the ball, keep the ball out of Mahomes' hands, keep the ball out of Tyreek Hill's hands to give themselves a shot, along with opportunistic plays on defense. The Browns can make it interesting. They forced 5 turnovers against the Steelers last week. That's how they got out to that 28-0 lead. They only ended up winning by 11. That 28 was big off of turnovers, the Ben interceptions, the snap over Ben's head to start the game. The Browns are going to need all of that to win this game. The Chiefs haven't won a game by 10 since week 8, and that was against the New York Jets when they were at their worst. I'm going to take the Browns with the points at 10, and I'm also going to take the under. Browns plus 10, under 56.
Here we go. This is the week where we really find out if the Browns are the Browns or are they for real. Getting to go against the Chiefs, 14-2 this year, our best team in the league, defending Super Bowl champs. Let's see what the Browns are all about. Geoff, you said it. The Chiefs haven't won a game by more than 10 against the Jets. I believe 7 of their last 8 games they won within 1 score. It was an NFL record. I mean, in terms of winning games, they still won the game. Maybe playing tough games that's battle-tested. Obviously, they don't care about the spread. So I do like that Browns plus 10 here. As for the over-under, 56, I like the under in that. I I think the Browns know what they got to do with the running game, minimize Patrick Mahomes, keep him off the field as much as possible. If there's any recipe to defeat the Chiefs and Mahomes, it is total time of possession, ball control, minimizing as much Mahomes as you can. They're going to get the run game going, try to establish that, do what they can. I like the under 56 in that. A couple key points that in mind when I think about this game here is the Chiefs obviously had that bye in the first round. How much of a factor will that go into? And not only did they have the bye this past week, in week 17, their loss to the Chargers, they rested everybody. So they're essentially coming off a 2-week bye here. Will they be a little rusty? Will the Browns be the team that's feeding off of momentum and energy of just coming off the biggest win in arguably franchise history? We saw some of these wild card teams, like, it's been a while, but like the Ravens and Giants in the past who have gone on to win the Super Bowl out of the wild card, knocking off the number 1 seed and riding out that momentum. So I think that 2-week layoff is something to keep in mind for the Chiefs here. We're going to see how they come out. They already tend to come out a little slow in games, as last year in the playoffs, I think they overcame 10-point deficit in every single win. So I do like the Browns 10. And with that being said, of all those stats here, over under 56, and let's see if the Browns magic can continue.
And just to go off of the Chiefs, they've only beaten 6 teams this year by 10 or more points. The games have been very close, even against some poor teams such as the Falcons and the Chargers early on in the season, and of course their loss to the Raiders. So a team like the Browns wouldn't surprise me if they make this game interesting. They're coming off a big win against the Steelers, of course, putting up a lot of points. They looked good early. Do I think that they're going to start like that against the Chiefs? No. But I think it'll be competitive. I think that the under is the way to go. 56 is just way too high. I don't see the Browns putting up that many points like they did against the Steelers last week. And the Chiefs with 2 weeks off or 2 games off with Mahomes sitting, I think he'll be a little rusty coming out. But I can't go against the Chiefs to win. I think they win this game by at least about a touchdown there. Going with the under. 10 is just way too high for me, the way that the Chiefs have been against the spread to take them to cover that 10. So I'm going to go with the Browns and the under 56.
I'm perfectly okay with being out on an island by myself if that island is in the vicinity of the Kansas City Chiefs offense led by the best quarterback in the world and the best coach in the world, in my opinion. So I will ride Chiefs over, and I'll tell you why, guys. Kansas City is 19th against the run. That's bottom third of the league, and that is the Browns' strength. The Browns, 25th against the pass, their defense. And what is the strength of the Kansas City Chiefs? It is, of course, the passing game and letting Patrick Mahomes go on and do whatever he wants out there. So I'm okay with going by myself. I think the Chiefs cover. Forget that one-score crap. They're going over. They're going to cover this, and they're going to give the home faithful, if they do let a few fans in there in Kansas City, something to cheer about. But boy, there's some juicy props in this game. And I will begin with Patrick Mahomes, but not the side of Patrick Mahomes everyone thinks. Let us not forget he's a very capable rusher. 16.5 is his rushing prop this weekend. He has had 16 or more rushing yards in 10 games this year, 5 out of the last 6, and he's had 4 or more attempts rushing the football in 5 out of the last 6 games. You can have success running the ball from the quarterback position against the Cleveland Browns, and I'll tell you why. Quarterbacks that have done it against the dog pound defense. Joe Burrow twice. Derek Carr. Sam Darnold has done it. And then Lamar Jackson's done it twice, of course, and Deshaun Watson. So give me some Patrick Mahomes and call me up. I'll make myself available. Thank me later. Now, about Patrick Mahomes throwing the football, his over-under touchdowns is 2.5, and I am all over this one. Take the over on Patrick Mahomes touchdowns because teams with 13 or less rushing touchdowns this year, that's what Kansas City has, 13 rushing touchdowns. So teams with them that have had 13 rushing touchdowns or less: Atlanta, Cincinnati, Denver, the Giants, Bears, Steelers, Chargers, Texans, Jets, and Jags. That's some pretty poor company rushing the football. And that could just be an attribute to how well Kansas City throws and how creative they are in the red zone. They'll bring Mahomes in motion. He'll shuffle it off to Kelsey. I really like Mahomes to run the ball, and I like him to throw for 3 scores in this one. And I feel really confident about those two numbers. Game number 3. Hoo-wee. Catch your breath, because game number 4, I like the Sunday slate better, fellas. Game number 4 is a matchup of the geezers, the GOAT and Drew Brees. The Bucks +3 at the New Orleans Saints. It's a 6:40 p.m. kickoff on Fox, and oh boy, I'm all over this one, so I will get to hit leadoff on this one. New Orleans defense is extremely talented. 3rd against the run, 5th against the pass, and they came on in the second half of the season. But I have a prop. We rolled with them last week. Tom Brady, we told you Washington's defense. Chase Young, be careful what you wish for. You got him, and Brady got you. 381 last week. People were saying play the under. Nuh-uh. We liked it, and we cha-ching cashed it. Tom Brady, 340 plus in 6 of his last 8. And the stat that really sticks out to me in this one, in 9 of his last 11 games in that Bruce Arians-led offense, Tom Brady has had 38 or more passing attempts. They're not going to be able to run the football. Fournette looked great last week. Ron Jones is dinged up. Who knows who's going to be running it back there? I really think New Orleans is going to key on the run. Brady looked really good handling Washington's front 4. I think he does it again in this one, but I do not think they win the game. I think they cover. So play Brady's yards over, because you go with the GOAT and you let things sit where they may. They're going to have to pass the football against New Orleans. And let us not forget, 2 bad games, 2 losses against the Saints this year for Tom Brady and the Bucks, but they didn't have Antonio Brown, who is on fuego up to full speed. His first game was against New Orleans in that primetime matchup. So with that being said, I'm playing the Brady yards over. I think the Bucks cover this one, but the Saints might win because I have them getting all the way to the Super Bowl. I think this one goes under.
I'm going with the Saints to cover this one. They won their first matchup by 11 and by 35 the second matchup. I like the Saints. They're going to be motivated to win this year for Breeze, so that gives them a little bit more there to play that 3. They've done it all year against Tom Brady, so playoff Brady might be different, but I like the Saints with the 3. I'm playing the over in this one just because, both times the Saints put up over 30. And I don't see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers only getting a field goal like they did the last time that they faced this Saints team. So I am going to play the over of 51.5 in this one. I like Kamara in this one, though. I think that he'll have a big day against the Tampa Bay D. I like how they made this the primetime game on Sunday night. It's going to be a good one, but I'm going Saints with the -3. I think it could be a little bit higher, and I'm going with the over of 51.5.
It's tough to beat a team 3 times in one season. It's tough to beat Tom Brady, especially in the playoffs. So, guys, the Saints have their hands full in this one. The Saints were able to keep Brady in check those first 2 meetings this year. When they got the better half of Tom, kept them under 239 passing yards, only allowed 2 touchdown passes, and picked them off 5 times. Well, Ryan, you want to talk about the Saints turning it on in the second half. What about the Bucks? 6-2 since that Week 9 blowout loss to the Saints. They've turned it around, especially Brady, who's thrown for over 306 times, to include last week's 381-yard performance. I don't know how this guy's doing at 43. It must be that TB12 method. He looks like he could play for 5 more years, maybe more. I don't know.
He might play to 50. He might play to 50. Who's to say he won't?
Yeah, I mean, the guy, he doesn't get injured. The Saints, they got Kamara and now a healthy Michael Thomas. Both of them found the end zone last week against Chicago, combined for 170 or so yards. And like I said last week, Drew Brees, this might be his last run. You can rest assured that he will be leaving it all on the field on Sunday. I just can't bring myself to bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs. So many heartbreaking losses for Drew Brees and the Saints in the postseason, and Brady always finds a way. I'm taking the Bucs +3. I'm taking over 51.5. I envision this one playing out like this. Game's tied for the Bucs that are down a possession or less. The ball's in Tom Brady's hand. Clock's under 2 minutes. You've seen it many, many times, and you all know how that will end. But regardless of the outcome, it's probably the last meeting we'll be able to see between two of the best. So let's enjoy it, buds.
I love the Saints. I am all over the Saints in this. And I know it's Tom Brady. I know it's how you get bet against Tom Brady. I know it's can you actually beat a team 3 times in 1 year? I actually did a little research on that. I'm glad you brought that stat up, Geoff. Over the last 21
I know where you're going with it. I know.
Times and occasions that this has happened, teams are 14-7 in the third time of meeting a team when they have already previously beat them twice. So it seems like we always have this notion, how can they beat them 3 times in a row? How can this happen? But I'd say it's 14-7, over 50% of the time it happens. Man, oh man, do I love the Saints in this. I just think it's wrong place, wrong time for Brady.
You got any advanced stats on teams that are playing a team for the third time after winning the first 2 against Brady?
No, I don't. That's a good point.
I don't either. I don't know if it's ever happened. A guy doesn't lose to the same team twice too often, especially in the AFC East. That cakewalk Brady's played in for the majority of his career. I was just giving you a hard time on that. That's good research on that.
Do your homework, folks. Do your homework. We do here, but I love the Saints in this. I don't care what the line is. +3 for the Bucs. That is way too low. No way they keep it within a field goal. The Saints are just too much to handle. Breeze, he's riding into the sunset. I'm not sure how far he'll get, but he's not going out just yet. The Saints, as you mentioned, had some of those brutal losses, but they're getting past it now. Wasn't even close last week against the Bears. But give me the Saints. Give me the Saints -3 and give me the over in this. It's going to be high scoring. Brady's going to be slinging. He's going to score, do everything he can, but it's just going to be a little too much to handle for the Saints.
And real quick, I just looked that up. Never has Brady lost 3 times to a team in his career, so it's never happened.
That's the beauty of it. We do our homework, we put the time in, and then we consolidate it and let you go out, drop it where it needs to go, and win some money as if you came up with it yourself. We make people smart around here, and we make people money. That's what we do. And that brings us to the stone cold, grade A, straight cash, homie, money-making locks of the week. The pick that you can take to the bank, lay it down, go to the window, and you know you're coming back and thanking us later. You don't even have to think twice about it. We're not wrong on these.
I've got 2. We've touched on both. Ryan, you hit on one. I hit on the other. Starting with Patrick Mahomes, over 16.5 rushing yards. He's done it 10 out of 15 games. Just a couple scrambles, and he's going to cover that. As you mentioned, Ryan, Sam Darnold, Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, Joe Burrow ×2, and obviously Lamar Jackson ×2. All did it to the Browns. Mahomes gets it done this week. Over 16.5 rushing yards. Take it to the bank. And the other, Robert Tonyan, over 33.5 receiving yards. As I mentioned, that Packers receiving core is going to draw the attention of the Rams to see Tonyan picking up some targets in the middle of the field there. 10 out of 17 times the tight end has crossed that against the Rams. Take it to the bank. Robert Tonyan over 33.5 receiving yards.
Geoff, if I could, real quick, tight ends that have accomplished that feat against the vaunted LA Rams defense. Dan Arnold twice. Chris Herndon. Greg Olsen had 33 on the button. Evan Ingram and the Bears tight ends. So I'm with you. I think that's a pretty good pick.
Lock of the week for me, this is simple. I was just talking about it. I'm going to stick with it. My lock of the week is Saints -3. It's easy. That's way too low. The Saints are rolling. The Bucs have Brady, but they've looked a little shaky in some games, even with him.
The Tonyan one makes me want to play it even more after Ryan just said what tight ends scored against the Rams and how many yards. But my lock of the week, as I said earlier, is going to be the Bills and the Ravens over 50. Like I said, Bills are averaging 38 points per game in their last 6. The Ravens are averaging 34 points per game in the last 6. I see this being a high-scoring game. It's going to come down to it's going to be really close. I like the Bills again to win, but the lock would be the over 50. If I'm doing a parlay from each game, I'm looking at the Rams plus 6.5, which is now 7, which I like even more. The over with the Bills and the Ravens at 50. I like the Chiefs to flat out win and the Saints -3, as Zach said. So that's kind of my parlay there, taking one away, doing a little bit of everything. And you're looking at about 8 times your money there on that bet, on that parlay, however much money you put on that. It's looking good. So that's what I would do this week.
So the question might arise, why would you want to tune in to a bunch of guys that just get together and talk about football? And the thing that makes it interesting is we're average Joes like you. We just do our homework. So it's bets for guys like you, homework from guys like you, so that you can go out and put something together, take it to the window, and you could pay however much a month, 30 a month, 40 a month for those sites that break it down. We do it for free. We make it easy. We're men of the people. Follow us, WDT Betting, on Instagram and Twitter. Sit back, feet up. 2 straight days of National Football League playoff action in the divisional round. The games won't disappoint. They never do. There's parity. That's why you watch them. Ben, thanks for joining me. Geoff, thanks for joining me. Joe, shout out to you. And your buddy and roommate, Zach, thanks for coming on the podcast. Play them. Go to the window, and you can once again thank us later.